She's a stallion though, but just want to hear it from her herself.
So of course, within Parliament, they set up different committees to, tackle different issues. And this is one of the committees that was set up, which basically talks about, St.Maarten with the decolonization. And like I mentioned, I know MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten has been, advocating this together with MP Ludmila. Oh, wait, let me...
Miss Duncan. Miss Duncan, right? Yes. Miss Duncan. Duncan.
Solange.
MP Duncan.
Yes.
Solange, yes.
Solange Ludmila Duncan.
Ludmila Duncan. So she has also presented this as well in Parliament. And, right now, this is the talks. Everybody's talking about U.S. law firms has been contacted or contracted or whatever words you want to use. And then you have the Pro Souligua movement who also presented this to the courts. They recently had a ruling on that. So we also have some guests from Pro Souligua joining us here as well. So first of all, let's introduce the MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten. Good morning.
Good morning, Suppa. Good morning, Rama.
That's right. We also have from
Good morning, St.Maarten. Sorry.
From Pro Souligua, Mr. Renate Brison. Good morning.
Good morning, Suppa. It's been a while.
Been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. So it's good to be here.
Yeah, so it's good to have you here. So of course, there's a lot of questions that a lot of people want to find out what's going on. So explain to us first what this whole decolonization movement is all about.
Okay, so first of all, just the first thing I want to do is, like I told you guys previously, let's just dispel the rumors. Decolonization does not mean independence, first of all.
Okay.
It does not mean a change of status. It does not require a referendum. It does not require something to go to the people about. So I want to just dispel that first off, because I know there's been stuff in the media. What decolonization means is that the Kingdom Charter in its present form restricts the islands of Aruba, Curacao, and St.Maarten, because it's not just St.Maarten, from having a full measure of self-government and a right to self-determination. So what does that mean? It means, like, for instance, if you look recently over the last 2-3 weeks, Aruba tried to get money on the international market. They weren't able to do so because things in the Kingdom Charter restrict them from doing that. You have, for instance, our minister last week tried to float a bond with the central bank. He wasn't able to do that because of things that are in the Kingdom Charter. So decolonization just simply means if the Kingdom Charter is amended, it will allow the three islands to have more autonomy within the kingdom to be able to do what they're supposed to do in their daily processes. That's all it means. It doesn't have nothing to do with independence.
But actually, didn't the Minister of Finance actually get to float the bond, but it was
requested.
It was pulled back because of...
Right. It was pulled back because there was a bond. I mean, I'm not an economics guy, whatever, at the thing, but remember, an advice had come in from CFT.
Advice, yes.
And
exactly. And they're an advisory board. So just the fact that you have a body there that's giving you an advice is basically in contravention of your right to self-determination and a full measure of self-government. And if that body was a body that was placed there by our local politicians, fine, but it has not been. It's a body placed there by
the highest supervision.
by higher supervision, or by the Netherlands.
But don't we have the freedom basically to take that advice? Yes or no? I mean, once that advice is given, we don't necessarily have to follow that advice.
Agreed. It's just an advisory body. But then again, what would happen if the minister went ahead? Let's say they didn't go down the way it wanted it to go down. What happens if they go against an advice of the CFT? Then obviously, then you'll probably have the state secretary flying down here right away or sending them a letter of some sort. So again, it's just just to clarify, it's just the Kingdom Charter itself. It's the problem. It's not running for independence. You don't need a referendum. If Holland were to strike, and I'll tell you later on what articles we're talking about specifically in the Kingdom Charter. And another thing I want to say before we turn over to them, these things were highlighted in 1955 to the Netherlands. So this is not something new. When they went and presented the Kingdom Charter to the United Nations in 1955, basically the delegation that went there from Suriname, because remember Suriname at the time were not independent, and the Netherlands Antilles went. The delegation Curacao, but then it was
Netherlands until
it wasn't Netherlands, so it was basically Curacao, but then it became the Netherlands Antilles.
I think it was the Netherlands Indies and Curacao.
Well, the Netherlands Indies would have been, I believe, Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken. But they were
already
independent at the time.
Yeah.
So when they came with their contingent to New York, the first thing that struck them was that all the representatives that went to New York at that time, 1955, none of them were quote unquote indigenous people. So you had a Dr. Vos from Suriname, who was a Dutchman. You had a guy called Jonker from Curaçao, who was a Dutchman, and then you had the Dutch delegation. So here you are in front of the United Nations, and they're like, but where are your people here to discuss your full measure of self-government and self-determination? And it's all Dutch. Secondly, they looked at the appointment of governors at the time were all Dutch people. So
By the Dutch people.
By the Dutch. So you had governors being appointed by the Dutch, who were, at the time, we had no local governors. So that showed them that we didn't have a full measure of self-government and self-determination. And also the 3 articles I will discuss with you later. Basically, we can't change our constitution without Holland. Okay, well, Article 44 of the Kingdom Charter, basically, we cannot amend our constitution without Holland approving. That's Article 44. Articles 50 and 51 basically deal with Holland being able to give the governor instructions to come in and provide higher supervision. If those 3 articles are removed from the Kingdom Charter, we are decolonized. That's basically it in a brief nutshell. Yeah.
So it just takes 3 articles to be removed.
There's also another one, 43, but if you remove 50 and 51, 43 automatically falls in line. Yes.
So it's just 2 steps and
That's it. So all the stuff you're hearing in the papers about we got to go to the people and we need referendums and nobody called for independence and change of status. What's happening is that a lot of the people that are speaking these things do not know the history of the Kingdom Charter. So if you don't know what happened in 1955 on the UN chamber floor, which, by the way, I got to mention, the Kingdom Charter got an approval rating from the United Nations General Assembly of only 28%. So let me take a drink here.
10 was against and 33 abstained.
Right. So they had 76 members present, and of the 76 members present, now you're talking like countries like India, Uruguay, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Russia, Paraguay, all of these countries were there. Of the 76 nations in attendance, only 21 saw that the Kingdom Charter, thought that the Kingdom Charter was
a good idea.
And they voted. So 28%. So they sent them on their way, and what happened was Uruguay put an amendment into our resolution. It's 945. I emailed it to you. And what they said, right, and India, but India did something else. Uruguay basically stated that you can go away with this Kingdom Charter if you want, but these people do not have a full measure of self-governance. They do not have a right to self-determination. And also, bear in mind, should this come up again in the future, only the United Nations General Assembly has the competency to decide whether these islands have a full measure of self-government and a right to self-determination. That's in Resolution 945.
And they believed in it so sternly, right, that those 2 countries abstained from even voting for the statute. So they didn't go against, they didn't go for, they abstained.
So they walk out, they went bathroom.
Yes, sir.
Right, exactly. So you had 33 countries. I mean, I only mentioned the 21 because abstain doesn't really mean you're in favor or not in favor, right? You could be either way. So I just focus on the 21.
Pull back.
Right. And so what happened was, so when you hear about us going to court and these things, the ultimate decision lies with the United Nations General Assembly because they placed it in our Resolution 945X.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're seeing this, come up in the year 2020 now. 10 years ago, of course, we had 10-10-10, and we had to write our own,
Correct.
And I think the focus 10 years ago was to get from under Curaçao. That was the focus. That was really like, we want to ban, we want to abolish the Netherlands Antilles, and we want to go on our own. That was the focus, and go and become an autonomous country under the Kingdom of Netherlands. That was mainly the focus, nothing else.
Because that was the question. Why wasn't this looked into, make sure we cross our T's.
Right. But what happens is, I always tell people knowledge changes your behavior. So for instance, in the 1800s, people didn't know what a car was, so they used a horse. Once we discovered what a car is, we changed our behaviors, we use cars.
Change the laws.
So, you change the laws.
The rules.
It's kind of like if you're into IT, every day the technology is changing. So it's the same thing. So we didn't have this knowledge in 2010, but luckily for us at Pro Souligua, we've been doing the research for the last 3 years. What got us going into the research was when PLP was removed from Statia. We decided to start to look, yes, I like to use the word removed. I found it very alarming, and my uncle found it very alarming. He's the president of the foundation. So we started doing some investigations, and all of this information came up. And then there's a wonderful report written by a Dutchman called Heyliger-Marten, where he discusses in full details. He submitted this as his thesis, PhD thesis for University of Leiden, and he has a lot of information in there. We read it, and then we just kept going, and here we are today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, recently, Pro Souligua also, you guys went to court on the same issue,
Right.
But the ruling came back not in your favor.
Right.
Tell us a little bit what that whole court process was about,
Okay.
and what the ruling actually now translates into.
So we had two cases going concurrently. So we had a thing called a court geding, which is just basically a short court procedure where you file the case and then within 2-3 weeks you get a response. That was to basically hold off on the Caribbean Reform entity until we get to finalize the validity of the Kingdom Charter. That's the whole gist. Can we get a validity of the Kingdom Charter? That came, we appealed the thing. We were declared inadmissible because of a couple frivolous things. One thing they said was we didn't have a long enough track record dealing with this issue. That's the first thing the judge said. Second thing she said was we didn't submit our articles of incorporation. But if you know anything about a foundation, it's your chamber extract that really is what determines whether or not you can function as a foundation. It's not the articles of incorporation from the notary, because they take those to the chamber. Then the third thing she said was we didn't give the Dutch state enough time to answer to our grievances, so to open dialogue with the Dutch state. And I think the fourth thing, they said that this local court doesn't have the competency or the legitimacy, I don't know what the legal term is, to decide on kingdom laws. So those were basically it, and because of that, we were declared inadmissible. We didn't lose the case, we were just declared inadmissible, and we're appealing the case, and we also have another case going on concurrently. So we have two cases going on concurrently.
Okay, all right.
And the petition.
Right, and we've also sent in petitions. And also I want to mention, by the way, Aruba sent in a petition, just like was passed last week, since July. Curacao sent in a petition on 10-10-10 as well. So it's not just St.Maarten. Aruba has done their work, Curacao has done theirs, and we're finally on board as well.
So the three islands right now want the same thing, though, the decolonization.
So, yes, because, there's another narrative to, but they're signing on. I said, well, sure, they're signing on, but don't forget in July, because what I found out recently is that Aruba has a consulate that they share with the Netherlands and Washington, D.C. So part of the Dutch consulate in Washington, D.C., part of it, Aruba rents a space in there. And they're instructed that their diplomat there go to the UN. I actually emailed you the copies of the petition. So you can
yes, I just got it, yeah.
And then Curacao did the same thing at 10-10-10, and we did the same thing recently as well. Sent some petitions in, and obviously you have the motion of last week from MP Duncan and MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten.
Yeah, that's what I want to get into now. So MP Grisha Heyliger-Marten, once again, welcome to the show, and congratulations on being voted the second vice chair, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
They not voted, appointed. I should say, as the second vice chair in Parliament. So speaking about Parliament, this came up in Parliament last week, where the motion was presented on the process of decolonization, and I think that's where a lot of the questions started to arise. Right. Okay, what's going on? Where are we going? Weren't we supposed to have a discussion? I saw PFP and UD asking different questions about the law firm that was contacted, who's going to pay the bill, what are we doing, basically, et cetera. It's like we're moving forward without even discussing anything as yet. So that's the confusion that a lot of people had. So from your side or your point of view together, I mean, unfortunately, MP Duncan isn't here to talk to us about it. But can you give us an explanation from your side on the whole process?
Well, it was important first that we understand the history. And that's why I said it was very important to allow Mr. Brison to explain you the history. So we know now, we've established the fact that we have not decolonized. Let's look at the history of St.Maarten now. Let's look at 1995 when Hurricane Lois hit us. It was a different government then. Pay keen attention to that. We had, I think it was Desas and Zestek, I think was in government then. And they created like a stichting, like a foundation. They put the money on, and they had oversight on all how we spend the money to rebuild the country. And it went smoothly. Fast forward to 2017, a complete different government, VVD, CDA, and I think, mainly those two, and Desas is there as well. They decided to go with a World Bank, of which they provide us with 550 million euros, was it? Of which 70 million euros must go to the justice, and not only the justice to rebuild our jails, but the justice to investigate, to do more investigations for that. And then the rest of the money, I think we only to spend maybe a third or a fourth of it thus far, because it's very bureaucratic. So our schools are still not up to par. Our jail that used to house 100 and something people can only house about 80. It's still not up to par because we have to go through so much red tape to get to the funds. Fast forward now to to this year, the pandemic. Now we are at literally our backs against the wall. On 3 occasions we were at our backs against the wall. The first one went smooth. The second one, they put the World Bank in there, and now we're still waiting. The country is still trying to rebuild and grow from that. And now we are at a complete reset button. We are pinned, not even back against, pinned with bolts against the wall. Like, we have nothing. And you come with these conditions, these 3 conditions, these 3 tranches. The first tranche, they forward you the money. I think we met the condition. The second tranche, we just recently met the condition. And now the third one is like, okay, you're going to agree to allow me to run your country for 7 years and make reforms at, without you having any say, any input, and then you can get the rest of the money. So now you're looking at yourself and you're asking, but why are you allowing us at our most vulnerable time making this? Why are you negotiating with a country like this at the most vulnerable time? We don't have a say anymore. So Parliament has decided to take a long-term trajectory. In July, Parliament passed a motion telling government that you can negotiate with Holland provided you remain in the parameters of the the kingdom charters and local laws. Once you remain in that parameters, negotiate as much as you want. Recently now, we just passed MP Duncan, actually it was her initiative. She decided to propose an initiative to create a decolonization committee. This is a brand new committee. Curacao don't have it, Aruba don't have it, we're the first to have it. Why? Because we realize that there are democratic deficiencies. We realize that there are, that especially how the negotiations has been going recently, that they're trampling on our democracy. It's either you give up your democracy and allow them to come over and just take full control of your country, or you allow the people to starve and say no to that and allow the people to starve. That's a very hard predicament you're putting yourself in right now. This is not easy. We're a brand new government. We just got in February, and now you have 2 buttons. You don't know which one to choose.
So basically the situation that we're in now is what happened to Stacia back in 2017, like how they came in and just take over. Is that what's happened?
That's a different story.
That's a whole different story.
I wouldn't say the same, because there was a physical removal of an elected government.
Okay, so the government is not being removed.
No, but I think it's using a different tactic whereby sign or you don't get your
sign and receive,
sign and receive, or sign and don't receive. And the thing is, another thing is to not to cut you off here, MP.
No problem.
The CRE has some conditions, and it's like 60 plus conditions, and a lot of people haven't read it. So when I hear people saying just sign for the money, I said, but have you read the conditions? Suppose in the 7 years, and this is just an example, Holland decides to introduce a 5% property tax. You have a house worth $200,000. I'm not a mathematician, and you have to pay that yearly divided by 12. Where are you going to get the money? Suppose they introduce a land tax, that your land that you have, they measure it off per square meter.
They already did in Borneo.
3%. Yeah. Where are you going to get the money?
That's a land of many taxes as well.
Thank you. And thank you. Land
of many taxes.
So what I'm saying is, and remember, Parliament cannot, if we sign on, Parliament cannot stop any of these actions. They couldn't say no, we're against it. So they could impose anything they want. They could impose a tax on goods coming in at 10%, and there we go, our consumer prices are through the roof. So we have to be very careful what we're signing, because this is almost 10 years they're talking about being here, and then they're pulling out. So be careful what you ask for. We're not saying don't sign on. What we're saying is, as MP said, don't trample on international laws while trying to help the company. As a matter of fact,
The country.
the foundation, our foundation, Pro Souligua, suggested to them, open a foundation on all 3 islands. Take the money from
Same
the World
as
Bank that you have it,
1995.
in D.C.
Yes.
Put 500 million euros in it. Staff it with Dutch people because apparently
Local people ain't good enough.
Right.
Right. With
No
thieves,
problem
with
with
this,
that,
with that, with the next.
No
Okay, fine.
problem there.
Staff it with your own people. Take 70 mil, fix the jail. Take another 50 mil, give every student a tablet, a laptop, and a thing. Upgrade the internet. Whatever you see fit, do it, but just leave government alone. If you really want if you really are for the advancement of the people, put your money where your mouth is. Open your own foundations, bypass government, and just do your philanthropic work as you want to.
But if this is happening and they see it as a trampling of of St. Maarten and other countries involved, can the UN or you step in and say, hey, listen, guys, what you're doing is not lawful. It does not,
Of course they can.
Of course they can.
And
But
that's-
So why hasn't that happened as yet? Then if this is what's going on.
You want to answer that?
Yeah, you go
look
ahead.
like you're ready to answer that. No, you go ahead.
You go ahead.
You go ahead.
All right. Well, basically, what it is, the UN is kind of like a VIP club. It's for independent nations only. But yeah, it is. I mean, look, it's independent countries only. St. Kitts is there, Antigua is there, St. Lucia is there. So you need to find a country that's going to bring your cause to the United Nations General Assembly. You can't just go to New York, knock down the door. We're here. We have problems. There's procedures to follow. So we need to get a sponsorship either from the Special Decolonization Committee, the Fourth Committee, whatever, and maybe one of the countries, COPAL, some organization to bring our cause forward to the United Nations General Assembly. And then from there, once we get to explain to them what's going on, then obviously Holland would have to answer to these things. Like, for instance, this situation in Statia would look very, very bad internationally because especially now that last week Statia put the very same government
Back in
place with an overwhelming majority. It doesn't look good.
Right.
So, it's going to take time. It's not something that happens overnight.
Aren't there repercussions when it comes to the colonizer allowing their colonized country or island or state or whatever they're over when they don't function to optimal capacity or
Yes,
something
they
like
can
that?
get kicked out of the UN.
So
One of the repercussions.
So let's say, for example, just hypothetically speaking, if we don't sign off on this, on whatever they're trying to impose on us, and then we start, let's say, for example, we start to fall and we start to fall back, whatever the case may be, it starts to make international headlines, it reaches to the UN.
Right.
If the UN sees this and sees Holland allowed us to reach this far,
Right.
and then, for example, they say, but yeah, we gave them an option, but then they actually look at the options and saw what we tried to ask them to do, and they didn't want to do it, and they say, well, Holland, you could have done this instead of trying to force your foot down their mouth.
Right.
What would then happen to them?
They can.
Go
ahead. You go ahead. You go ahead. Go ahead.
Look, the whole thing about these countries is they're all about their reputation. Now, Holland on the international scene has a reputation of being a very peaceful country, a very open country to immigrants from all over the world. Normally, when you have disasters or anything, or wars in other countries, they're very open to their policies to have people come in, refugees, exist,
Human
and that,
rights
the next
advocates,
thing. Human
which
rights
I don't
advocates. So on
understand
the
too much.
international scene, Holland has a very, very good reputation internationally with most countries. Yes, they have partnerships with other countries, donating money. They're one of the biggest donors in the EU, even though recently they didn't want to lend money to these countries that are having problems. So they have a very good reputation internationally. But for some reason, when it comes to these 6 islands, it's a different story. So I think that reputation would be scarred a little bit if this were to actually end up going internationally. It's not the first time, because in the 40s they had a lot of problems with Indonesia, and the U.S. had to actually step in and tap them on the shoulder and say, look, listen, you can't be going on with these people like this. So that happened 60, 70 years ago, and here's where we are. So I don't think it's something where sanctions could be put on them or banned from the UN or those kind of things. I just think that their reputation
Would be a little tarnished.
Yes, would be a little tarnished.
Okay.
And 65 years ago, when they decided to delist us and not report, because there's 2 things that happened. You didn't explain that, I think, Renate.
I did.
When the representatives of Suriname and Curacao went to the UN and said, hey, no, we're happy with the statute. They don't need to report anymore.
Right.
We don't need to be a colonizer. We have our autonomy. We're fine. So for 65 years, St. Maarten, you can say, the Dutch Caribbean has been in I always call it a purgatory, a constitutional purgatory. We've been in limbo for 65 years because Holland didn't have to report to the UN and to show the developments of St.Maarten. So that's why they haven't heard from us in 65 years. This is the first time in history when I call this historical, that this is an historical event, that we passed that decolonization committee. It's historical, not the motion. I'll explain the motion very soon. It's historical because we've never used Resolution 945 ever in the history of St.Maarten in this country. So we've established the committee, and I think I was busy discussing that earlier. That committee is mandated to make sure that their tasks with jotting down everything that the country needs to finalize the decolonization process. So Article 73, A, B, C, D, it talks about realizing our own culture, building our institution. Those are the Holland is obligated to do that. That's what the UN is created. What is really the essence of the UN? If you understand why the UN was created, it was created right after World War II. They wanted to end wars. They wanted peace. They wanted they were advocates for human rights. They wanted to start humanitarian efforts. They wanted to mainly decolonize the 70-something countries that were colonies. And we still have 17, and we're not listed as one, thanks to Suriname and Curacao 65 years ago saying that we're okay. And they were not representatives of us. But here we are now with our back in the walls one too many times. Parliament has decided with that motion, enough is enough. Because the next time we have another hurricane, a super 5-6 hurricane, because it was a crazy Hurricane Irma, another pandemic, we can't continue on negotiating with Holland under these pressures. It's time now to get the UN in to mediate, finalize the process, come with some kind of agreement moving forward to be respectful. We are supposed to be equal in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, equal partners, and we're not being treated equally. That's all we're fighting for.
And that's what I wanted to ask. Let's say the decolonization process goes through, what will then our relationship be with the Netherlands and probably with the rest of the world? Like, well, what happens then?
It leaves...
Because people might say, because like you mentioned, decolonize does not mean independence.
Right.
And a lot of people
remain in the same status we're in right now, still be an autonomous, but we would actually be an autonomous country within the kingdom rather than being autonomous country within the kingdom.
So you keep your passport, like just basically everything.
Like I said, you have three things. You could be a territory like Anguilla. You can have an association like Puerto Rico, which is kind of what we have now. We have an association, but we don't have any internal, full measure of self-governance. Right? We always have to be looking over our back, or you can go completely independent. So the option would be then to bring it to the people for that. What I was going to also say is these 17 non-self-governing countries like Montserrat, Anguilla, BVI, Grand Cayman. I'm trying to think of it. I think Bermuda is one of them. Annually or biannually, the UN has a special delegation that goes to these islands to check out to see what's going on. Now, these islands, obviously, a lot of them don't want the status quo to change. You hear rumblings sometimes. You might hear it in the opposition. But generally speaking, they're happy with the position they have.
They're good with it.
Yeah. So, so being a territory, you don't have to not want to be a territory. If that's what the will of the people are, you can do it. But obviously, in 2010, we voted to be an autonomous country within the kingdom. But the autonomous part of the country part is obviously lacking.
Let's talk about the law firm also that was contacted basically to help us deal with this decolonization process. You're hearing a lot of talks about that it's a U.S. law firm. Who's going to pay the bills? St.Maarten doesn't have the money. We heard that Curacao and Aruba might be on board to also help with the payments. Tell us a little bit more about that.
As Renate recently stated, Curacao and Aruba already has made efforts to knock on the doors of the UN. We were recently, Curacao, Aruba, and St.Maarten was recently discussing in discussions with this international law firm. St.Maarten was the one to decide to go with it. That proposal that was made public by the Daily Herald is a proposal for Curacao, Aruba, and St.Maarten. St.Maarten is still in negotiations with this law firm. We are still in negotiations. We just recently passed a motion stating that we are going to seek international legal advice internationally. This person will be seen as a lobbyist for us to knock on the doors of the UN. This company is stationed in Washington, but the breakdown, that was just a proposal that Daily Herald just put out there. We still have to negotiate and decide what the strategy is moving forward for St. Maarten.
Now, is this-
Curacao and Aruba is still in discussions with them. They didn't sign anything yet, but we decided to take it one step further, start a decolonization committee. Pass the motion. This motion is to give support to that. This motion is stating a lot of, there's like 7 resolutions in there.
And does this
one
law
of-
firm have a track record dealing with situations like this?
Yes, this actually, let me get, I'll
Brief history.
I'm going on 2 things. What do you want me to talk about, a motion or track record of the law firm?
If both of them briefly,
Okay.
because I know we run out of
Okay,
time.
we run out of time. Okay, let me go quickly on the motion. The motion is basically saying, government, continue negotiations, because I don't want people to think that this decolonization process is going to hamper the negotiations for the third tranche. It's not. Continue the negotiations with government of the laws, and if you have to bend a law, and I have to say it roughly and clearly, if you have to bend a law and it's beneficial for the people of St. Maarten, then yes, we're not saying you have to remain strictly within the laws, but if it's really beneficial for the people of St. Maarten, go ahead, and that's resolution 4 of this motion. Also, it's giving, it's saying that we're going to we support Pro Souliga's initiatives on what they're doing, because everything that they do is really we're pulling information, we're grasping every varnish or every verdict that comes out of that helps us build a case. Okay. Because it tells you now, if you're going to just throw out Pro Souliga out on technicality and not really paying attention to the crux in the matter of what's really happening, it says a lot. So that helps us too. And also, what it's saying is that we are going to seek international help, and we're still in negotiation with that now. This lawyer is a human. He's an international lawyer known for working on human rights efforts. He's helped many colonies as well. A lot of countries that is in
limbo with
international laws, exactly. And recently, I don't know if any of you guys saw Hotel Rwanda. Anyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. the manager of that hotel has been recently kidnapped.
Oh wow.
And this lawyer is representing that man. That's the kind of work he does.
Was that in Rwanda? He got kidnapped?
Yes, sir.
Oh wow.
Okay, check it out.
Yep.
So just a quick question. So you guys said that 65 years ago that Suriname stepped out of line and basically represented us when they
No.
not Suriname. Help me.
Curacao? Yeah, well, Curacao was at the time called Curacao, but it was actually the Netherlands Antilles.
Okay,
Yes.
so they represented us when they didn't necessarily had to represent us, and they said that we were good, we were fine, and stuff like
that's
that.
why we're delisted.
And they didn't hear from us in 65 years.
Because what happened is one thing I forgot to mention is that at the time in 1955, you had 8 countries that had colonies. So you had the United States, UK, France, Denmark, Australia, Holland, Spain, and one more. Okay. Out of the 8, only 1 was excused from reporting back on their colony. So basically what it was is, okay, you don't have to decolonize them now, but periodically you need to come and report right now. Like the UK, they report on Anguilla, BVI, Montserrat, Grand Cayman, Turks and Caicos. On a regular basis, delegations go there to check and see what's going on. Holland was excused from reporting back, okay, under 73E of Chapter 11. So that's why we've been in limbo for 65 years. So out of the 8 countries, so for instance, the United States at the time,
colonizing countries.
right? So the United States is still in charge of the USVI. There's reports that go on for them. Let's use Montserrat for example. There are reports that go on for them. Denmark no longer has, Belgium no longer has, and those. So there's only 4 countries that have left: France, us, but we're not officially on the thing. UK and US, I believe. There might be another one. So it's supposed to be constant reporting. What happened in 1955 was Holland was excused from reporting back on the Netherlands
So
Antilles.
73E was excluded.
Was excluded. The only one of the 8. So that is why for 65 years we haven't been on the radar of the United Nations.
Yes.
So let's say this whole process, we get to the process and we get it. We're decolonized and everything moves forward. Where do we, do you agree also that we also as a country have to take responsibility for
Absolutely
have to put those
correct.
things
For where
in
we're
place.
going and how we got there and everything as well.
Ding, 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 ding.
But you know what it is,
Absolutely.
Suppa?
In-house now.
Yes.
Once we get the in-house now, and I'm glad, and that's another thing, I'm glad that we're seeing so many younger politicians like MP Peterson, MP Gomes, Madame over to my left, MP Duncan, and all of these younger people coming in. Not to, there's a changing of the guard, per se, and that know that we can maybe move the country in a more responsible direction, structural direction. But yes, absolutely yes. Once that happens, it does not give you a free carte blanche to go and just
Do whatever you want.
do whatever you want. You have to be fiscally responsible, because now you're going to have more responsibilities without that safety net. If you can walk on the international market, that doesn't mean you just borrow $500 million to go and build casinos and da-da-da-da-da. You got to make sure that your
Duncan
people
mentioned it in
Yeah.
Parliament this week.
Yeah.
She was shocked to see that there's no policies in place for years. No policies in place on how you give out land. No policies in place, and
Absolutely.
those are the things we're going to be looking
Because
keenly at.
can we, let's say if that does go to, can we set up our own entity to basically watch over us, our own parliament and everything as well? Can that be possible with our own local people if we want to choose, or whoever is competent as well?
Of course we can.
Be a huge advocate of that, and not anybody. I would just say civilians. Like people in the community, a teacher, or a lawyer, or this and that. Just set up.
And what you can do, you change it around
You
a
change
little
it
bit.
around.
You don't make sure, maybe find out that it's maybe not politically appointed people.
Exactly.
Because that you want it to be fair across the board.
Maybe you can have you Super run that.
Change it weekly. You
No, but
change
it's
it
a good
every 3
initiative,
3
sir.
weeks.
Right.
It's those are the kind of. It has to be fair.
But you hit a very good point there, that it's not only, it is right
Getting
now
it
to
and done
judge,
with
but
that.
it's
It's
also
also
internal. We
internal.
also have to fix up
I agree.
ourselves, or else you end up like a lot of the Caribbean, or a lot of Caribbean brothers and sisters who are heavily in debt,
Right.
Because of government changing, government borrowing, government changing, government borrowing, and then the people are saddled with.
Yes.
So will there still be a discussion within the committee? Because like
But
a lot of
that's-
people have been seeing,
that's the
it's moving
purpose.
fast. It's like, whoa.
No.
Yeah.
But that's the purpose of the committee. That's the committee is going to be the informative body for the people. Every step we make, we call a committee meeting to discuss it. It's not going to be a 1, 2, 3. We're moving fast. Decolonization is not going to happen like this. This is a long-term trajectory. It's not going to be. Government is busy with COVID now. That's their focus. We're busy on a long term. We're looking at a roundtable conference in July, and that doesn't mean that when you sign in July everything will be done. The committee has to remain in place to execute what was agreed on. So it's good. It could take us 5, 10, 15 years, and maybe 20 years from now, maybe we decide to become independent. But we have to have things in place first. We have to be solid, make sure that exactly what you say. Go through the internal factors, make sure everything is structured, that we can be strong enough that one day we can say, let's go for independence. And yes, I am an advocate for independence, but things have to go in place. I agree to that. It's
Things need to happen first.
Yes,
And
of
also the
course.
sense
We
of
need to be
urgency.
strong. We need to be strong on our 2 feet. Go ahead.
Also, the sense of urgency is also that in 2010, there's a resolution 65/119, a UN resolution which declared this the third decade for the eradication of colonialism, which expires December 31st. Now, obviously, they're in talks now to expand it to another decade because they felt like they haven't done enough. So part of the reason you see us kind of moving, and obviously December is right there next month, so it's not going to happen. But part of the urgency is to also show the United Nations that before the deadline for this
Yes,
UN resolution
very important.
65/119, we've been active, so that way we
So
don't
get
fall-
the process
right, to get the
started.
process started before the
Okay.
deadline.
All right. Well, we want to thank you guys. We're running out of time.
Yes.
Actually, we're over
We ran
time.
out of time, long time. That's okay.
Thank you.
And it was a very, very interesting discussion. Thank you very much again, once again,
Thanks for having
MP
me.
Grisha Heyliger-Marten for coming in. And much success to you and MP Solange Ludmila Duncan.
That's it.
Also on her initiative and emotion.
Yes.
And let's see if this committee could work together towards what you guys want to achieve. Also, Pro Souligua movement. Renate Brison, thank you for joining us today in the
Good to be
studio.
here. Good to be here.
And you guys, once it's good for the country,
It's good. It's-
once there's
yeah.
no agendas or anything,
No,
hey,
hidden
November.
agendas, hidden
Yeah,
agendas.
we want to see
Everything
this,
is there factually.
Right.
we want everything to be transparent, everything
Yes.
to be open, and we want this country to basically move forward. And
Exactly.
you know, not to use what Trump said, make
Right.
America great again, but you
Make
know,
St.Maarten great again.
You know, make St.Maarten
Yes.
make it back to the powerhouse that
That's
that
strong
it once
again.
was.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Make St.Maarten strong again.
St.Maarten strong.
Agreed.
All
Totally
right.
agree.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Suppa,
again,
for having
guys.
us.
All right. Rama, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we got birthdays coming up, and then we still have the Monday morning mix. It's back by DJ Sly. It's gonna be a little bit late, so we'll just throw that in right after we do the birthdays. All right. Keep it locked.